All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the NBA Tournament Strategy Show, where we are going to first celebrate the freaking awesome NFL slate we had yesterday. At least here at DFS Army, uh, a ton to celebrate there. And then we'll get back into this slate. It's a relatively short one, so we don't have to dig into too much. But first, huge shout out to my guy Blue Collared Hall. Had a nice 7K win yesterday. I know my guy Diego had a huge win yesterday as well. I'm struggling to find the exact size of win and what place he got. B Dubs had a nice win. Nazzle, Nolan T had a freaking 5-figure win. I'm blanking on the exact size of it, but across the board, I saw a ton of helmets up top. So like hand clap to Army yesterday. I was profitable yesterday. The people who watched the pre-lock show for the NFL contest, we were on Amon Ra, we were on Hertz. Mike White had a good game yesterday as well. Garoppolo was my sneaky play that fell through. But again, guys, we MME here. So I had 20% Garoppolo. I still had 80% exposure to the rest of the guys. So again, celebration across the board. But let's focus on this NBA slate. That's what matters now. The past is in the past. Let's start off with the Clippers. The Clippers against the Hornets. This is a nice size slate. I prefer slates this size. I think it's fair that I tell you guys this. My best DFS days are typically Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. I don't do contests on Saturdays just because I like to focus, on my own lines on Saturday. But Tuesdays and Thursdays are my ideal days, usually because slates are larger. I think that's the reason. Or like Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I think Wednesdays and Fridays I do well, but Monday usually is not my best day. But I've had plenty of profitable Mondays too. That's just when I overanalyze things. But let's dig into this slate. We'll start with the Clippers. Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, they're questionable, so we definitely need to keep an eye on that. I'm not really too interested in either one if they play. We can definitely look at Paul George if Kawhi is out, but if they're both playing, I'm not really super excited about it. Powell is out, so that's already a fact. The only guy that really stands out for me on the Clipper side of things is Zubac. Ivica Zubac, he has been on fire this season, and like to play bigs against the Hornets. We've been doing that all season. No reason to really stop now. Nice, Jonathan. Glad you have some NFL money, and yeah, let's keep making money. Let's keep making money. Trey 9K or Pascal 9.5K OS is asking. We'll get there, man. We'll get there. Both are definitely interesting options for sure. All right. So yeah, Zubac's really the main guy when it comes to the Clippers for me. Outside of that, there's of course like John Wall, Reggie Jackson, other like filler guys on the Clippers. I'm not as excited to play them when everyone's healthy on this team. Like I'm definitely still going to have them in my pool, but I don't really foresee a future where I'm going to have a ton of exposure to those guys. Unless the DS is forcing it, but again, not foreseeing that, at least as of right now. Going back to the Hornets sides of things, LaMelo Ball, Hayward, Dennis Smith Jr., they're all out. Really, the main guy who dominates usage on this team when those guys are out is still Terry Rozier, who had a fantastic game last time out. Thankfully, we were on top of that one, so it wasn't a huge surprise, but definitely an interesting play for sure. Terry Rozier, he leads his team in usage at 30.4%. He's interesting here. I still view him as like a tournament play. Like I doubt he's going to be a core play for me today. Mason Plumlee, he's definitely been more consistent as of late. That's not something that we really view him as like he's not Mr. Consistency, but he has been as of late. He's been in good form. So again, like when it comes to these Hornets guys, they're going to be in my pool. They're going to be more GPP fillers. I don't foresee, at least as of right now, any of these guys being really strong core plays for me, but we're keeping these guys in the pool for the most part. Ideally, we'll have some guys out to make that game a little bit more interesting, but nothing's really popping too much for me there. All right, next up we have my guy Giannis against the Orlando Magic. Giannis has been fine. as of late. He hasn't been slate breaky or anything like that. And part of that has been because he hasn't been seeing like the high 30s in minutes. Like they just haven't needed him to do that. He's been low 30s, sometimes upper 20s when it comes to minutes. And so that ceiling has been limited. I think that's been more so just because they've been dominating games. I'm not really going to let that impact how much I'm going to play Giannis one way or the other. What I've been doing on the last few slates is trying to get leverage on Giannis. It's still too early in the day for me to say if that's what I'm going to try to do today. If I'm remembering correctly, on Friday, I think we did like a 20% exposure on Giannis and a 20% exposure on Embiid to get leverage, and it worked out with Embiid there. So again, that's just like another comparison. Like when you're GPPing, you can get different, or when you're MMEing, you can get different in a few different spots and get leverage in a few different ways. So I don't know if I'll do that again today, but definitely a possibility. The matchup is golden against the Magic. They are not great at defending in the front court. So I don't hate the idea of playing Giannis here. You can tell I'm still kind of going back and forth on it, but we'll see. I just don't know who's going to be able to stop him, which again, I think I said it on Friday. We can say that on any slate. Chris Middleton's return decreased my interest in Jrue Holiday, but Madness, one of our coaches here at DFS Army, was all over the Chris Middleton, or was all over the Jrue Holiday play on Friday. And so if you followed him on that, you crushed. And I'm still not excited to play Jrue Holiday with Chris Middleton back and this team being relatively healthy. But we'll see. We'll see. If Madness is still in Jrue, I might consider it. Have to check in with him. Outside of that, Bobby Portis is more of a fringe play for me with Chris Middleton back. Brook Lopez is questionable today on this slate, so something we need to keep an eye on for sure. I think that would make guys like Bobby Portis and Chris Middleton more interesting plays. Thomas Dye saying looks like a Pacers day. Yeah, it is. It is a Pacers day. We'll get there. There's certain teams that like even when they pop, I'm still like, I know I'm going to eat the chalk on it, but it's not. Some teams are just less exciting to play. But hopefully they make us money and it doesn't really matter how much fun it is, you know? On the Orlando side, they are still without Suggs, Wendell Carter Jr., and Chuma Okeke, while Mo Bamba is questionable. So definitely a lot we're going to have to keep our eyes on. Fultz and Cole Anthony, they didn't play 30 minutes last time out. It seems like they're still trying to be pretty careful with them. So again, in this matchup, I wasn't going to be too interested in playing them either way. But if the matchup was a little bit easier, at this price tag, if they stay pretty cheap, I could see them being more viable here. So hopefully they stay calm. One more game. Don't have a breakout game. When you're in a better matchup, we can start targeting these guys a little bit more. I think they'll probably still be in my player pool for sure, just in case, but something to consider. All right, moving on. We have the Celtics at the Raptors. And guys, I'm going to be honest with you. Between Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, I really don't know who's going to be the guy anymore. Sometimes I feel like I have a good lean, like, oh yeah, it's going to be a Tatum night. It's going to be a Brown night. But now it's going to be a trust the DS night on it because it's really just going to be like, hey, hopefully I can at least match the field on these guys just so I have exposure. And then if the DS gives me more exposure, then so be it. Marcus Smart is questionable. Of course, if Marcus Smart is out of this game, we can be excited to play guys like Brogdon and White. They're the guys that I would be most excited to get exposure to. And then, of course, Brown and Tatum, their usage increase would be substantial as well. So we would be able to get a little bit more exposure to them there too. On the other side of this game, Pascal Siakam has had a gigantic game in his last game. So I think you can definitely go back to Pascal Siakam here. But to answer your question, OS, Trae Young or Pascal Siakam, I think Trae Young is definitely the better play in a vacuum, where Pascal Siakam is still going to be more of your like GPP tournament play. Like Trae Young has a chance to be a core play today, Whereas Pascal Siakam is still going to be someone who just kind of fills some of your line that has high upside and high ceiling, but has a high price tag. Anyone else? OG Anunoby and Fred VanVleet are both GPP flyers. They're not popping for me too much. Still early though. Gary Trent Jr. is cheap and has a high ceiling. Oh, I'll need to dig a little bit deeper and do some more research on Gary Trent Jr., but it wouldn't shock me if he ends up being a leverage play for me today. Just one of those guys, sneaky upside, who I like getting exposure to when he's below 5K. All right, yeah, I think that's everything for the Raptors and Celtics. Next up, we have the Thunder at the Hawks. And this is a game that you're going to have a lot of exposure to. Starting on the Oklahoma City Thunder side of things, you have your guy SGA, who hopefully you've had at least some exposure to throughout this NBA season so far, or else things have not been going well for you. But that's a short way of saying he's just been fantastic this season. He's had multiple slate-breaking performances. He's finally priced up at 10,300. We can go from there. Skull said, "Hey Bob, who can I go to for help with NBA coach wise? I've been slumping and I don't know what's going on." Hey, DM me in Discord, Skull, and just like tell what I would want to know is just kind of like what you've been doing, and then we can just figure out like what part of your game needs the most help, and then I can kind of point you in the right direction. So like for me, guys who are getting like top 100, top 200 lines, and they're trying to find a way of getting like a top 10 performance. I feel like I'm pretty good at like helping people find those low owned GPP plays. If you're looking for like a better process, or you think you need to find like a more consistent process, I always recommend connecting to Scott Newman. He's a really good process guy. He does the same thing every slate. And so you can just create a baseline that way. And then we can try to help you figure out ways of getting more upside. And then of course, like Madness and Mutt, their coaches here as well, who are just really, really good, who can give you really great plays. They can also help you with process. They've been around for a long time, so they can give you a ton of insight there. I think Upper Slad, he's a coach as well here at DFS Army, who's really good at keeping you in the know when it comes to news and notes, and can give you some sneaky GPP plays as well. And then lastly, Keg, he's just great all around. Like me, he's 100K countless times, and so he is a great resource for you as well. So yeah, a little bit of ramble about the coaches at DFS Army, but yeah, that's a great reminder of making sure the public knows that this is a public show, but the pre-lock show that we do later today at 5:30 p.m., which focuses more on implementation and what we're actually doing on this slate, is for VIP members only. And so if you're interested in having access to that show and seeing how we're actually going to utilize the domination station, definitely check in at 5:30 p.m. Eastern today for that show. Click the link in the description to become a VIP member and use the promo code BOB for a 10% discount. All right, moving on. So yeah, SGA has been fantastic this season. You can consider him as a GPP play. I'll need to double check and dig into it, but at least earlier on in the season, the Hawks have been decent at defending against guards this season, so it hasn't been a gigantic area of weakness. That might have changed over the last few weeks. So I need to dig deeper into that. Giddey, Josh Giddey, man. He's had some strong performances. I still feel like he's a little volatile, so I struggle to trust him a ton. But the upside is definitely there, and he'll be in our GPP pools for sure. Lou Dort is another guy that we can consider on this team. Not really a guy that I love to have exposure to, though, on slates larger than 3. Outside of that, your Pokus, your Jeremiah Robinson Earls, your Jalen Williams, the rest of the Thunder guys, I say it time and time again, the coaching staff, they're tanking. They want to try out different combinations. They want to see how different guys react in different scenarios. They're going to get weird with these minutes. So these guys are always GPP viable because they've been in the nuts lines on countless occasions, but you're not going to have consistency out of them. So they can easily give you like 10 points just as easily as they can give you 30. Now, on the more interesting side of this game is the Hawks. They are still without John Collins and DeAndre Hunter. So, like my guy Thomas said, AJ Griffin, we can attack that spot once again, and Jalen Johnson, we can attack that spot again. To be honest with you guys, I had no idea who Jalen Johnson was before Friday. So it's interesting that now he's starting and actually producing and doing well. So hopefully I can catch the game tonight so I can understand him a little bit more. So definitely would check that out. So yeah, I like AJ Griffin and Jalen Johnson here. They're definitely going to be like your value plays on the slate without a doubt. Clint Capella is popping as well. Trae Young is popping a ton. Would not surprise me at all if Trae Young is a core play. DeJounte Murray, I think, is like the GPP pivot off of Trae Young. DeJounte Murray, he is better everywhere across the board from Trae Young, in my opinion, just by watching basketball. But Trae Young is the more elite scorer, and so his high upside and ceiling is just the better play over DeJounte Murray. Also, Trae Young is the guy. He has the highest usage on this team from an offensive perspective, and so that's where we would prefer to target in this situation and spot. Yeah, it's cool. Like, give me the whole breakdown. No worries, man. Jonathan said that pre-lock show has really helped me start profiting. Nice, man. Definitely a must tune in, seeing who you like and running with who. Oh, that's awesome, man. It helps like knowing that, because like I'm trying to make sure that I'm helping definitely like a VIP members do well, because I started off as a member, and so I always try to make sure that people are getting value out of it. So it helps like knowing that you're actually, being profitable from it. That's awesome. Don Juan, man, I'm sorry you didn't get the notification. You like Murray way better? Yeah, if you like Murray, this is a fantastic GPP spot for you to go higher on him. Like, those are the type of things, like, as a member, I would see coaches be like, oh, I really like this Trae Young spot. And then for me personally, I would do some research and dig deeper into it. And I'd be like, oh, this is a nice leverage spot on this guy. So I always recommend, if you have a lean like that, go for it, man. That's how you can take down the tournament. If he's going to be 4% owned, I have absolutely no issue with that. If they were closer in ownership, like Young and Murray, then I'd be like, that's probably not the best call. But at low ownership, that's not a bad thing at all. Thomas, I need to dig deeper into that. I haven't seen where that would be an issue, just in a lot of the sites that I trust and the research that I do. But I'll make sure to dig into that and make sure we have an answer for the pre-luck show. Oh, thanks, Thomas. Glad it's helping you out too, man. That really is making my day, guys. You guys have no freaking idea. All right, awesome. Moving on. We talked about Trae Young. He's really the guy. Would not surprise me if he's a core play. Bogdan Bogdanovic, he did play on Friday night. He only played 22 minutes. So that's his floor. Not really a high ceiling guy at this point. You can take your shots if you think he's going to see an increase in minutes. I don't hate it. He's only 4,700, so he's priced well, but not a guy that I'm going to have a ton of exposure to. We'll see what the DS is actually thinking for later. Kangas, you are not right. Cutting Baker Mayfield might be the highlight of my day. That brought an instant smile to my face, but I think he might go to the 49ers, to be honest with you. Join up with CMC and go for a Super Bowl run. That might ruin my day. If that happens, I will be kind of upset and might not do a show for a while. Need some time to myself. But yeah, I really like the Hawks. Long story short, I don't think that should surprise anyone, especially if they're going to be super low owned. All right, next game, we have the Miami Heat at the Memphis Grizzlies. Jimmy Butler is questionable, so we'll see what happens there. Bam Adebayo has been in great form for a while now, which is weird to say, but it's true. Kyle Lowry has been in solid form as well, even with Jimmy Butler coming back. Jimmy Butler is questionable, like I already said, but he's played in some of the last few games. Like, he played 35 minutes on Friday night, so It's not like Jimmy Butler's been out for a while. Not to mention that in that Friday night game, Jimmy Butler scored 50 points in that game. So yeah, I think Jimmy Butler's doing okay. But he's questionable. If he plays, he's a viable play. If he doesn't play, then I would increase my exposure to guys like Kyle Lowry, Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo. That's how I'm handling that one. The other side of this is the Memphis Grizzlies. Ja Morant has been a monster with like a 36.9% usage rate this season. Like Ja Morant and SGA, those guys have been the guys on the last few slates. I don't love playing guys against the Miami Heat, just kind of a philosophy I've had over the last few years. But again, like if the DS loves him, and as I do research throughout the day, if he starts popping more and more for me, then I'm here for it. Brandon Clark is viable if Steven Adams is out. Steven Adams is questionable. I really hope this isn't a Brandon Clark chalk night, but if it is, then it is. Something to keep an eye out for. We'll see how it goes. Guys like Caleb Martin and Max Strus on the Miami Heat side of things aren't super exciting for me, but again, they'll stay in my pool as GPP lineup fillers. In really, really good form since returning from his injuries as well. So again, a lot of viable guys here on this Memphis team. I think a lot of it will depend on if Steven Adams is in or out for how excited I'm actually going to be about it. Just because again, I don't love the matchup. I know, Bobby, you are so right. Like poor Niners. Like how many quarterbacks can you lose in one season when your team is so good? They are so good, but they can't have a quarterback stay healthy for the whole season to save their lives. Like so sad, so sad. All right, moving on. We have the Sixers at the Rockets. Apparently, James Harden has a chance of playing today. It's probable. He hasn't played basketball for about a month, so don't really expect him to play heavy minutes here. So that lowers my interest in Harden. When it comes to Milton and Melton, they are less interesting at this 6,800, 6,700 price tag. Like that's a little expensive. I think they will still see upper high 20s in the minutes range just because James Harden will have limited minutes. So again, we don't know who'll have limited minutes, but come on, guys, he'll probably have limited minutes. So Milton and Melton are still viable, but definitely a lot less exciting. I doubt I'll get there. Similar story of Tobias Harris. The only reason why we can consider playing Tobias Harris is because he is dirt cheap at 7K. That's really cheap for him. Would love to see him get even cheaper, though, so we'll see. The matchup against the Rockets, though, is really nice. So Joel Embiid, we got that right on Friday. This is another great spot for him. We'll probably get leverage on the field on him again if I had to predict where my research is going to go. Shungen on the Rocket side of things is viable here. He hasn't really been looking good over the last few slates. We haven't seen him hit the nuts in a while or have a ceiling game in a while. He does have a tough matchup against Joel Embiid, so that's another scenario I don't like to target against. But again, the price tag helps make him more viable. The matchup against Embiid does increase the likelihood for fouls. So that's going to be something we play around with. I foresee that I'll probably have exposure to him. We'll see how much leverage we're actually getting, though, later today. Outside of Shugin, though, like Kevin Porter Jr., Jalen Green, I can't keep chasing those trains anymore. The matchup is a bit of a pace down spot against the Sixers. They both have just been pretty volatile, so not spots that I would be too excited about. We'll see if the DS likes them. All right, next up we have the Suns against the Magic. Thing to remember about that last game was just that Joel Embiid. Like, that's pretty much it. Next up we have the Suns at the Dallas Mavericks. Chris Paul is questionable. That's huge. That is huge. He's been out for a month. Ideally, he doesn't play, so we can keep playing Devin Booker, who is still 10K. You guys might recall I don't love playing guys against the Mavericks because the Mavericks do play at a slower pace. And so typically playing at a slower pace means that you won't have as many offensive opportunities, which equals lower scoring. Devin Booker, though, the slower pace doesn't typically impact his play style as much because he's not a high pace guy anyway. So I'm interested in him in this spot. The matchup for Luka Doncic, I don't love, but as you guys know, we don't X out guys. We don't X out a lot of guys here. So we'll probably still have some exposure to Doncic, even though I don't love the spot for him. But Booker's kind of like the guy that I think might be a little bit sneaky here. So we'll keep an eye on that and see if he ends up being a leverage play. Outside of that, I think Ayton is probably the only guy who I still have interest in. His price tag is starting to increase a little bit, but he's been in fantastic form. Like the numbers he's been putting up, he's had 43 DraftKings points in 3 out of his last 5 points. Like you saying, Thomas, like this is a playoff match, a playoff rematch. So definitely another thing to keep an eye out on. I don't know. This game is feeling a little iffy. We have Christian Wood questionable for the Mavericks. If Christian Wood is out, that definitely changes things a good bit. Tim Hardaway Jr. is already popping a little bit from like a fantasy points per dollar standpoint, but I think him, Spencer Dinwiddie, maybe even Dorian Finney-Smith might start to pop a little bit more, since it wouldn't shock me if the Mavericks try to play a little bit smaller. I think Kleba would also see a little bit of a boost for if they play big. So yeah, an interesting spot here. I'm kind of going back and forth on it, kind of like I did during the playoffs. It's just a weird matchup for these two teams, and I don't know. I feel weird about it. I need to dig deep there. All right, next up we have the Golden State Warriors against the Indiana Pacers. And starting with the Pacers, they will be without their guy, their usage monster, Tyrese Halliburton. McConnell is the guy who was starting for Halliburton, but he's also questionable on this slate. So definitely a lot to keep an eye on from like an injury perspective here. But this is how the team breaks down with Halliburton off the court so far this season. Benedict Mathurin leads the team in usage at 33.7% usage rate. Then comes Miles Turner, who I've loved this season at 27.4%. Buddy Hield at 20%. Andrew Nembhard at 15%. And then TJ McConnell at 17.1%. So I think most of us are assuming as of right now that TJ McConnell will play, making him probably one of the best plays on the slate at 3,900. Way too cheap for his upside and usage at this point. I freaking love Miles Turner. I have this entire season. I'm going right back to it again. Yeah, this is a back-to-back for them, and they did not look good last night. And that's part of the reason why I'm not excited. So I do like Miles Turner a lot. Like, that's just a thing. But I'm not excited to play them, even though this is a great spot. I'm going to do it, barring any other injury news. Like, just because you don't feel good about it, it still makes sense, and so you just do it. I've been playing DFS long enough where you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable, and this is just one of those spots. I don't love it, but I'll have plenty of Benedict Mathurin, plenty of Buddy Hield, and plenty of Miles Turner. The part I do like about it, though, is that this is the last game on the slate by a lot, and so by having exposure to this game, I won't be sitting there scared and afraid of the guys chasing me because I'll have plenty of exposure. I like Stephen Curry here. He has a ton of high upside and exposure. He has a ton of high upside. He has a 31% usage rate, so a high usage rate as well. At least as of right now, he's probably one of the top spend up options on the slate. So we'll see. When it comes to like Klay Thompson and Draymond Green, I think they're fine. Andrew Wiggins smashed against the Rockets in their last game. So he's viable as well, but he's questionable, so we need to keep an eye on that. Similar story with Jordan Poole, questionable, but I think these guys will both be fine. But we'll wait for the actual news on that. Even Jordan Poole has been in better form here as of late too. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough slate tonight, guys, if we don't get injury news. Like, we know we can't attack this Pacers team, but there's a lot of fringe high upside guys on this slate. So I'm hoping that my research helps me a little bit, point me in the right direction on who I want to get for leverage play. So definitely do check in to the pre-lock show later today at 5:30 p.m. because we'll be ready to go. We'll know who we're getting leverage on. We'll know who we're increasing exposure to, know who we're lowering exposure on a little bit, and be ready to go from there. So I appreciate everyone for sticking with me if you made it this far in the slate. Don't forget to like and subscribe just so you don't miss out on the notifications. So you do get the notifications for the other content we do outside of basketball. That's really good as well. So appreciate everyone for watching and hope to see you guys later today at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. Bye.